Today is July 23rd, 2013, about 1 p.m. Is that right? I'm sitting with Mr. Gale Norman.
Thanks again for coming in.
What?
Thank you for coming in, and thank you for driving him.
She'll keep me straight, and she does our lower will.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Yeah, so if you don't mind telling us about what you know about your parents' homesteading, if we could start there.
About what I remember about homesteading?
Yeah.
Oh?
Or just about the homestead.
Yeah. Our homestead was out on County Road 7.
Okay.
About 4.5 miles this side of Snake River.
Okay.
And the first, after I was born and they went out there, the first house was a dugout, partly dug out in the bank, and that was where we lived, dirt floor, but it was packed pretty good and sandy.
Did you have any siblings?
Yes, I had two. I had an older brother, and he came with my folks to homestead in 1920, and but he died in April before I was born in November in 1922.
Okay.
So I never saw him.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a younger brother.
So you were born in November of 1922?
Yeah.
And what was it like growing up out there? What would you do?
Oh, do chores around the homestead and go to school and did a lot of riding for cows. We didn't have a big herd. The folks had some milk cows, I think about 10 most of the time. And in the winter, while we'd shoot rabbits and skin them for furs and trap coyotes.
What was school like?
What was school like?
Yeah.
Oh, it was summer school. We started in April, I believe it was, and went usually for 6 months. I guess that would be through August. May, June, July, August. No, it was through September.
Why was that?
Well, because in the winter time we had more trouble getting to school with the snow. And I do remember walking, and we had to walk to school. A lot of times it was too far, but when we could walk to school, you always looked ahead before you stepped so that you didn't get snake bit or something like that. You really learned to look where you were walking, and then to kind of keep an eye out around you too. And then when school was quite a ways off, it was 5 miles one time from our house to school, and that was a little too far to walk, so my brother and I both rode the same horse. She was a kind of a lazy old horse, hard to get her moving. And then another neighbor got feeling kind of sorry for us, and he found a little black mare that was a wild horse then, and he run it in and caught it and gave her to us. But she was really scary, vicious sometimes. She just took a notion, but I do remember that one time that we were kind of breaking that horse in, and my dad would walk halfway to school and lead the horse, and both my brother and I would ride the horse. I got the front seat, and he had to sit behind the saddle and hang on to the saddle string. And I remember walking along behind Dad, and I don't know what that horse saw or thought she saw, but she started bucking, and about 2 jumps I was off. But my brother, the strings on the back of the saddle that he hung on to, why, he had slid his hands down to the end of the strings and then just wrapped them around his hands so he didn't have to grip all the time, it would hold him. And when she started bucking, he couldn't get loose. And I can remember after I got up and started watching him, why, she'd make a jump and he'd swing clear up in the air and down on one side, and then the next he'd go clear over and down the other side, and eventually he did get loose, and the horse run off, and so we had to walk the rest of the way to school. And our schoolhouse was a one-room building, just a wooden building, and the roof wasn't even gabled. They put a higher beam, maybe a foot high, right down through the center, and then halfway out about maybe 6 inches, and then they just bend the boards over that, and it made a curved roof. Mm-hmm. I have a picture of that schoolhouse, and our school teacher and a bunch of kids that went that year.
Wow. How many kids were in your class?
In my class, when I first started going to that school, there was another girl, and I think the youngest in the class was in the 1st grade, and my brother was, he ought to have been in the 3rd grade then, so he'd have been in the 2nd grade, I guess. And let's see, did we have anybody? I think there were 7 of us. Don Dunn and my brother and I and 2 Martin girls. Nick Martin had it. And the oldest girl, I think, was in the 8th grade that year. And that was that school teacher's first year, 1931. It was his first year teaching. And he made it not a rule, but it was happened every day that he'd go out and play with us kids in the recess and noon hour, and the games weren't really exciting, but he was trying to teach us about baseball.
Oh, okay.
And so we didn't have enough people, so it had to be one person. He'd always pitch because he could pitch and hit your bat. and it just had to be worked up. There'd only be enough people for few in the field, and maybe a couple, 3 batters, maybe enough to about load the bases. And ante over, well, that was one thing we'd play, and that was a game where you choose up sides, and half of the kids would go on one side of the schoolhouse, and you'd throw a ball over the roof, and then somebody on the other side had to catch it in their hand. They couldn't let it hit the ground and bounce or pick it up. If they didn't catch it, well, they just had to haul their ante over before they threw it. But they'd have to throw it back, and then if somebody caught it, why, we'd go around both ends of the school building, so they'd have to look to see who had the ball, because you had to touch them with that ball to put them out.
Mm-hmm.
And then you got that person on your team. And pretty soon somebody ran out of anybody on their team, why, that was the way we decided who won.
And how long did you go to that school?
I went to that school starting in the 2nd grade, and I went until I was a sophomore year in high school, 2 years of high school, so that would have been,
Who knows?
10 or 11 years, I guess.
Did you finish high school at a different school?
We came to Craig.
How was school different in Craig?
Ooh, there was a lot of kids, and they had a brick building, 2 stories, and steps up to the ground floor, and a apartment basement for the 1st floor, flagpole, fire escape from the 2nd story, where you could, from the study hall, you could jump into the fire escape and slide down out of the building.
I practically had to be pushed into the fire escape.
Well, that was a fun day. And there'd be people down at the bottom, or a couple of teachers, or a teacher and a bigger kid that would be there to grab your hand as you came out and keep you right side up so somebody didn't slide into you.
Do you remember how many people were in your graduating class?
I believe it was 40, wasn't it?
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Around
And I graduated in the class of 1940.
40. 40? Oh, yeah.
Were there any sports teams for high school?
Oh yes, but I didn't go out for sports because I had chores that I had to do at night. So the only thing that I believe I went out for was I went out for basketball for a while, and I went out for track, and I did level in track. That was a medley relay.
And what did you decide to do after high school?
I wanted to drive trucks, and so that's what I did. I started as soon as I got old enough to get what they called a chauffeur's license then, and I drove for about, 40 or 50 years, I guess. Part of the time I farmed. Bought a farm after Lois and I were married, and while we were farming, most of the time I drove a truck for a living. I farmed for occupation.
We still have it.
Yeah, do.
You still have the farm?
Still in the family, yeah.
plan for our son to have it.
Wow. So, when you went trucking, were you gone for long periods of time?
Yes, a lot of the time it was wartime then. And while we didn't haul aviation gasoline or anything, we did haul fuel to Dove Creek, Colorado was one of the big places clear down in the southwest corner of the state. And they sold fuel to vanadium mines. So that was real necessary that they had fuel. And at that time it was awful hard to get drivers, so a lot of the time that would be a solo by myself. And that trip usually took about 30 hours because it had to go out west of Grand Junction into Utah to get down to Moab and Monticello and then back into Colorado to Dove Creek to have a road that we could get over all right. And she can verify that I used to drive in my sleep. I could drive down the road and stay in the road, but I was asleep and not entirely conscious of what was going on because I had guys ask me what was the matter with me down at a certain place in the road that they'd met me and blinked the lights at me to say hello, and they said I was just going about 25 miles an hour on my side of the road, and I didn't even remember meeting them. And once in a while while I was doing that, I'd go through a town and get on the wrong road and wake up after a while and have to go back.
The time that he started to speak about, he just he was going up grade, and he just was going slower and slower. And I kind of knew how I drove, and pretty soon pretty soon I said, "Gale, are you asleep?" And what? But the voice woke him up, and he knew he had to do something or he'd be spun out,
That was just side of rifle, and I was coming up there, and after I got up to, I don't know if you remember where you go between the house and the barn, down kind of on the way to Rifle, but I could get up pretty good speed, and I wanted to be going just about as fast as I could when I went by that house and barn for the steep part of the hill, so I wouldn't spin out, because at that time there wasn't guardrails on the road, and if you spun out and slipped, well, you went down over a lot of banks, enough that it rolled a few times before it stopped. But she noticed and had rode with me enough that she knew that there I would be building up all the speed I could, and I should have been. But she woke me up, and I had time to get it up so we didn't spin out going over the hill.
Go ahead.
The government watches that close now. You wouldn't be able to get by with that.
So, you driving the truck and everything, the roads are really important to you. Were the roads paved when you started trucking?
Was they what?
Were a lot of the roads in Craig paved when you started trucking?
Yeah, well, the main highway, like Highway 40, I think it wasn't all paved. There was some down around Artesia that wasn't paved yet. Artesia is what they call Dinosaur now.
Were there a lot of other people on the road?
No. No, there was not much traffic. That was one reason I liked to drive at night, because there'd just be so little traffic that I could round the curve while I could take the wrong side of the road if I felt lucky, and the inside curve. That wouldn't go over very big anymore either, but a lot of people still do it.
And did you see any changes in trucking over the years?
Oh, yes. Yes. It used to be with trucking was, we had, most of the trucks had 2 transmissions, and they were fixed so that, like the main transmission was, I think they were around a 500 RPM split. When the engine slowed down 500 RPM, then you could shift gears. But by that time, 500 RPM, you were running out of power. So you had another transmission that would divide that. And like if you were up in the top gear, well, you usually had a direct connection with the main transmission, and then an overdrive that was half would split the gears. So the first time you'd shift out overdrive to direct, and so that would be direct drive, and then the next time you'd shift out of the high gear and the long split and then to the half gear before, so you could, instead of having to let the engine slow down 500 RPM, you could let it slow down 250, and that gives you more power. And so you learn to put your arm through the steering wheel and shift one transmission and shift the other with your other hand.
I always wonder how that worked with the...
They called it splitting gears. And on trucks anymore, my son still drives, but he said that they're automatic transmissions and all kinds of safety controls, and you just pretty much sit there and steer and push on the accelerator when you want to move forward and step on the brake when you want to slow up. It's not much gear shifting. I think maybe it's kind of like a shift on a car, but I never drove one. But he doesn't like them very well because he learned to drive with me splitting gears, and he liked to do his own work.
How do you remember Craig changing over the years?
Oh, I remember one thing that was really remarkable to me when we come in from the homestead to buy groceries or whatever. We'd go by the courthouse, and they had a real nice green lawn all around there, and that man that took care of that lawn had a gasoline-powered lawnmower.
Amazing, huh?
Boy, I envied him.
What's changed in Craig since then?
Oh, there wasn't, I guess there were probably sidewalks right here, cement sidewalks. If you drove in a car, why, you drove in and you parked at an angle, and on the right side, both ways, and when you got ready to go, you just backed out into the street. What else?
What about, like, businesses?
Oh,
What kind of businesses changed over the years?
there's the only, I think the first chain store or big store here would have been Safeway.
And that was when it was across the street here?
At that time, the Safeway was down, you know, where the intersection of Yampa and Victory Way is. Safeway was in that first building on the east side, south of the street, the big brick building. That was the Safeway store.
It's been several places, hasn't it?
Yes, oh yes, it moved around. Walter Smith had a mom and pop grocery store, and
Burke's Market, they
Burke
were.
had a market. One of the places that you'd put in there always go into when you came to town was the cobbler shop to get your shoes repaired. The armory was a big building then. This is it, isn't it? Yeah.
That's where you are.
Do you remember any community functions that were held in this building?
Oh, practically all of them. I played for dances in this building. There used to be a stage and then seating for crowds as you came in this door. Well, you walked downstairs a little bit, didn't you? And then there was seating for crowds and then a stage at the other end. No amplification. And they would have square dances and round dances and all sorts.
Pretty regular.
The big occasion here in the armory was the fireman's ball on New Year's Eve.
What was that like?
Exciting. There was one thing that I do remember about the fireman's ball, and they must have watched the drinking real close, because I never knew a fight
Oh, really?
at the fireman's ball.
Would you see a fight at other events? Would you see fights at other events?
Oh yes, if you went out to some of the country dances where you could count on it.
But not at the fireman's ball.
Nope, that was pretty well. The kid, whole families, everybody would come to the fireman's ball. Maybe I'm running off at the mouth too much, but Midway, you probably don't know where that is, but out beyond Cedar Mountain, there was a big school community building. The people out there all got together and they built a pretty good sized hall where they could have school classes. They had school in it, and on weekends or Fridays, the folks could all come there, and the kids would have spelling bees and mathematics adding contests and things like that. But that place was well known for the fights that took place there. I had a friend I was driving with. This was while World War I was going on, but it would have been about 1942, I guess. He was driving for the same company I was in Wyoming, but he came down here to help me because I was behind with my gas hauling, and he wasn't busy. And while he was here, he met a couple of girls where he ate, and they told him about the dance at Midway on a Saturday night. And they had a car, and if he wanted to, they'd take him out to that dance. And so he said they went out there, and this, if I tell it right, it's got just a touch of profanity. But he would tell me about it the next after the Saturday night dance. Why, I probably met him when we changed drivers on the truck. And he told me that these two girls had invited him to go out to Midway because they had a car. And so he said they drove out there, and he said there was quite a lot of cars parked around, and there wasn't any light. They didn't have, except at the inside the building. And at the building where they went in, why, it was built kind of on a slope, and that side had a few stairs and a little porch light right out of the main door, and the light was coming out there. So when they got out of the car, well, they headed over to those steps, and he said they just got to the steps, and the door was open, so it was lighted outside. And he said two guys went just flying by, one chasing the other. Didn't bother with the steps. The steps were on the side. They just jumped off out in there and took to it with a big fight out there in the yard. And he said that kind of surprised him. And he said, well, the way he told it, he said we started up the steps, and God damn, here come a couple of guys, one running out chasing the other, and out there, and then started fighting out in the dark. And he said he kind of shrugged his shoulders and thought, so much for that. He said we walked on into the door and turned and looked in, and God damn, everybody was fighting.
That was contagious.
And that was common for the dances.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
That was his comment. He was a kind of a Dutch, I don't know what nationality he might be in, but he drove in Wheatland, Wyoming.
Gale,
I had gone up there one time hauling out of Casper. There was a war going on then too, and once in a while we go up there, and they lived in Wheatland, and Wheatland was about halfway between Casper and like Fort Collins and Greeley, and we'd haul fuel down with those places.
Gale, what his question was, was it common to have those fights? Was it common?
It wasn't surprising for a fight to be at a dance anyway.
Somebody usually was generous and
usually
had the booze or
there'd
something
be a
somewhere.
little alcohol involved.
Hidden somewhere.
Yeah.
Well, aside from the dances, what would you do for recreation when you were young?
One of the big things here in town was right west of the armory here. There weren't any buildings. There was a big vacant lot, and the vacant lot was just a little bit south of here, wasn't it?
Well, but it was vacant back there.
The vacant lot where they had they dammed it up and they'd flood it and make a skating rink.
That was the best place.
That was
because there was a lot of room, and it was nice. Ice skating rink.
All of this lot back here that is kind of a city park now, that's where that skating rink was.
Okay.
And it went to the alley, and then pretty near to the sidewalk here in front.
So
And there was a street lights around, so that there was light. They had to do a little bit of filling in the northwest corner of it to bring it up so they didn't have to use a lot of water. So there was kind of a bank down off of that side. And I remember one friend of mine skating. That time it wasn't shoe skates. Mostly you clamped them onto your shoes and then tied the strap around them to help hold them on. But that boy was skating, and there was a kid in school that was kind of a bully. But this bully was picking on this friend of mine, and So he skated around, and when he got to that northwest corner, well, he looked, and there was a friend of his that was a good-sized boy. He was a big kid, and he stopped there and was sitting down there putting his skates on, getting ready to go up on the bank. And so this friend Don had skated over there and saw him, and he told him about this bully picking on him. And so this bigger boy that was putting on the skates, he said, you go over and do something, get him to chase you over here, and I'll take care of him. So Don said that he went back and got close to that bully and yanked his shirt tail out or something, and then he said, boy, he headed for Earl that was waiting for him over at that corner, and he said he was skating for all he was worth and staying ahead of that kid, and when he got to the bank, he couldn't stop, so he said he just started running over the bank, and he said that kid behind him couldn't stop either, so he come running over the bank right into the arms of big old Earl sitting down there. So he took care of the bully. The bully was on skates, and Earl hadn't put his on yet.
So it sounds like you guys had a lot to do. There were a lot of things to do then.
Oh, not a lot of things, but that was a big thing.
Well, I think one of the things is we kind of created our own fun. You know,
Right.
We didn't have to go to show, although we liked to. Didn't have to go to a dance. It just
there wasn't much traffic on the streets, and you could go back up here. About straight west from the middle school, do they call that?
Well, I don't know where you're talking about.
I'm talking about up around Nelson Hill.
Oh, yeah.
In the water tank. The streets that went up there, they didn't any go over the hill. Went up the hill for a ways, and they used to have a water tank up here on that'd have been Barclay. The water tank for the town was up there. And we could go up on that street, and that made a good for a little flexible fire sled that you could steer belly buster or sit down, and a little arm across, you could steer it with your feet. But that made a good sliding hill. And besides, it had the irrigation canal that used to run through the north part of town that was level, but it made a jump. You could go over that. They just filled it in or maybe bridged across they would bridged across it, but you could go over that fast enough that you'd go sailing out there for a ways and then jump belly buster sled or skis or whatever you had.
Did you ever hunt or fish?
Yeah, all the time, every time we got a chance. We didn't hardly, when I was out on the homestead, you wouldn't hardly leave the yard without taking your little .22 rifle with you. Because you might be able to shoot a jackrabbit, and that was, I think it was worth 4 cents for the hide on the jackrabbit. And sage chickens, might just sage chickens. Are they listening? Arnold can tell us about sage chicken because the alfalfa patch was good for that, wasn't it?
I didn't get into that too much.
Is that right?
No, I didn't get into it. Herb did. When I was younger. But
Well, they like alfalfa.
oh yeah.
Sage chicken.
Mhm.
Where would you go if you wanted just for hunting? If you set out to hunt, where would you go?
Believe it or not, here in Craig, you couldn't find a deer for miles. We used to go clear down to Deception Creek. That was between Maybell meeker, we would have to go a lot of times that far to find the deer.
Wow.
They moved to town.
And they didn't come to town here till the bad winter of, what was it, 1948, wasn't it, when we had the deep snow winter, and they migrated antelope, and antelope were just not here at all. But antelope came down and migrated here and came into town because there was rose bushes and things like that to nibble on.
What was so bad about the winter of 1948?
How much snow did we get?
Feet.
There was one snow that came in one 24-hour period that was 30 inches and wet.
Wow.
It caved in a lot of roof.
30 inches of snow in 24 hours.
Yeah. And at that year I was hauling gasoline from Casper and Sinclair, Wyoming, south of here, and there were days that it might take you, but from Bags to Highway 30, might take you practically all day, because the wind blew from the west and that road went mostly north and south. There was a high bank or anything on the west side, why the snow would be maybe 8 foot deep on the road, and you couldn't go around it. You'd have to wait a little. It took a snow blower to open it up. So that made a bad year, and deer migrated, and farmers had to practically watch their haystacks day and night. What else was bad? It was a good winter to catch up on your reading.
Wow. What do you remember about the big boom when the power plant came in? What was the town like then?
Well, when the power plant moved in, I was working for a construction outfit in Steamboat, and I hauled a lot of the road gravel and stuff for the roads around there. From Steamboat to here, 40 miles.
Wow.
Well, not quite. It was from Milner to here.
What was the town like?
What was
the town? How did the town develop with all those new people coming in?
Oh, it developed by leaps and bounds. We had the power plant made some difference, but the real thing that boomed the town was oil, and a lot of that was because of Rangeley, and because Craig was the end of the railroad. The transportation by truck to Rangeley and supplies and so forth really was a boost to the economy.
And what do you remember about the amount of people that came in to Craig?
There was a lot of them. They had trouble finding places to live. Can you think of any of the...
Well, I just know that especially the west end of town just seemed to really change.
Well, actually, yeah, that's right. When I first came to town, Ranny Street, if you know where that is, that's, from there was outside of town.
Hay meadows and stuff.
I can remember in this old school building that they tore down up here, just up a few corners here, the old high school. In the afternoons, being in the study hall, and I could watch traders farming out just west of Randy Street, plowing that hillside. Some of the people that came in at that time, one guy's family that I remember came in to drive a truck, and one of them drove with me. And I guess it would kind of illustrate about housing, but they had three kids, two older girls and a baby boy. And we were needing drivers real bad, and he had drove a truck a little bit. So one night I took over to pick him up and take him with me on a trip so he could learn the route and the roads and the truck, and kind of help him with learning to drive that particular truck. But stopped in, it was just south of what do they call it, Shady Lawn, on the east side of the street, between back of Hortons, you know. There was a motel.
Yeah, like that, I'm not sure.
It was a motel, and just a small room for people to drive in and stay. And these kids had driven up here they drove up here to come to radio school.
Oh.
And radio school was here in this building.
Oh.
They taught people shortwave radio and Morse code.
Kind of forgot about radio school.
But this couple came up to go to the radio school, and the only place they could find was that little one-room motel room. And so the nights that I was to take him with me, I suppose it was midnight or something like that, that there was a refinery here in Craig too, west of town. And I'd loaded a load of gasoline. We were taking it down to southwest Colorado. And so I just drove south on Highway 13 to start the trip, and stopped there and went across the street into the motel. He told me which room he had, and so I went and woke him up. When I went in, they had, I think they had a pretty good sized bed that him and his wife could sleep in, and then another little smaller bed, and the two older girls slept in it. And the little boy, Dickie they called him, they pulled the dresser drawer out, and he was sleeping in the dresser drawer. and that boy is still alive. And both of the girls still alive.
As far as I know.
What are their names?
Their names were Tucker.
Tucker.
Lloyd and Mary were the parents.
Okay, are you going to be able to think of the girl's name?
Huh?
Are you going to be able to think of the girl's name? The girl?
Yeah, Darlene.
Darlene
And Dolores and Darlene. Dolores, I think, decided she'd rather be called Betty now.
Well, yeah. Okay.
I probably got that.
No?
I
I think she did.
But the family name was Lloyd and Mary Tucker.
Okay. And how do you feel about Craig today? How do you feel about what you see in the town?
I liked it better then.
Well, it was...
Well,
you knew
for like today, you know, we drove from north town, and down, and I said, if we're lucky, we might be able to park right in front of the armory. And we were lucky. And incidentally, Safeway at one time was just right across the street in that.
Oh, right. Right.
I guess that's it.
Oh, there really has been a lot of change, especially downtown, because it seems like all the businesses used to be down this street.
And
I
the
guess
places
not
that were cell phones, like the shoe harness shop, can't even say his name now.
Pal Jones? Pal Jones?
Well, Pal Jones was later on a little bit. He had the shoe shop, but I was thinking of the old man and his boy, Iric, did they call it saddle shop or something like
Iric
that?
Saddle Shop.
It's just right across the street here. But things were kind of primitive.
Well, you can kind of see why you wouldn't need a saddle shop anymore. I mean, a lot of people probably use saddles and maybe have a lot of work done on one. I don't know, but at least it wouldn't be so many people riding horses.
Yeah, there was a lot of work as a work harness for work horses. That all took a lot of sewing that was tedious to do on the farm, but they had a great big sewing machine like a people had little, but they were big. They'd sew leather. And I can't remember how they powered them. I could probably with the foot treadle.
That would be surprised.
Do you have any just any closing thoughts or anything else you wanna share or you wanna have recorded?
No, I can't think of anything.
You don't have
We
any?
go to the store a lot oftener than we used to. Oh, one thing that was kind of funny. I guess it kind of fits in because it was an old man, a bachelor out beyond where my folks homesteaded. He lived on the river, about 4 miles from it. But he was kind of one of the rarities. He was a clean bachelor. He told me one time that he took a bath every month of the year, whether he needed it or not. and that was pretty clean. But when he first went out there at Snake River, why, it was closer to go to Baggs, Wyoming for his twice a year, spring and fall, he'd make a trip. And so one year, I don't remember whether it was spring or fall, but on the trip, why, he had a good team of horses and a good wagon, and he was got to go to Baggs and make one of the yearly trips. So he took off in the morning and he put his a box in. He called it a grub box. It was a wooden box and it had some food in it and a skillet and a coffee pot and a pan or two and some kind of like bacon you could carry. But the grub box and his bedroll. That he rolled up in a tarp and tied and put that in his wagon and drove to Baggs, and he could drive that 30 miles in a day, and if he was lucky he could maybe get part of his shopping done. Well, he went up there one time and got his shopping done, and then the next morning, why, he was still interested in visiting with the boys around town, and he didn't get started out till about noon. So he didn't get but about halfway home. But they were the homesteaders, lived along the way, and on any trip, anywhere at that time, if you got dark on you, if you found a somebody living, it was understood that you were welcome to come in and spend the night. And so he stopped in at this place about halfway home for him, and unhitched his horses, and he had hay with him, and just tied him to the wagon, fed him, and hauled in his bedroll. He didn't have to take the grub box in, but he took his bedroll in, and the family that lived there had gone visiting, but they'd left 2 of their boys at home to tend the chores and to kind of watch over things, and so they were the boys that were home. So he brought in his bedroll and spread it out on the floor, and the boys got to sleep in the folks' bed, a good bed, you know. So this old bachelor said during the night something woke him up, and he said he kind of sat up and looked around, remembering where he was, and he said there was a light on, and he looked over at the boys, and they had lit a coal oil lamp on a stand or something by the bed, and he said they both had paddles, shingles or something, and they were just beating the heck out of the whole bed. He couldn't figure out what they were doing. And so finally he sat up and looked. They were killing bed bugs.
Oh my God.
And like I say, he was a fastidious bachelor, and he thought about sleeping on the floor and his bedroll in there. When he got home, he told me, he said, I never took the bedroll in. He said, I hung it over a barbed wire fence. And he said after he got time, the horse had taken care of, he looked through the bedroll carefully, and he hadn't got any bed bugs.
Oh, that's good.
That's unusual. But one other thing, what about square dancing? That's something we've just completely
Yeah.
got about.
Square dancing, you know, is quite a popular thing now, but that was included in every country dance. The callers had their own kind of special calls, but it was a big thing. And there are a lot of old dances that people's homesteaders here came from all over, Norway, everywhere. So there were all sorts of different dances. One dance was named Varsoviana, and I knew it was spelled Varsovienna. And that was
He's writing it down.
Huh?
He's trying to get that crazy.
Oh, you got it? Okay.
It was Varsoviana, it looked like.
What I was really talking about was when we were in the square dance club.
Oh, you mean later on?
Well, yeah, that's part of our life.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Fun.
Later on, this hadn't been many years ago, we joined Square Dance Club, and with our Lord was one that went to our Square Dancing Club. And by that time, they had pretty well standardized square dance calls. The way it was before was each community had their style of dancing and the dances they did, but we'd kind of intermingle a little bit, so we'd get mixed up some great dividers with some Maybellites and Brown's Park and Hiawatha.
Yeah, but as a general rule, it's kind of still the same. Do-si-do and those things.
I got so my hip bothered me so much I couldn't keep up with the young kids in square dancing.
He thought he might need his hip for a while more. Yeah, he has. That's quite a while.
It worked, didn't it?
Yeah. He still has problems with it, but he's
And
still
you're
moving.
playing your instruments?
Huh?
Playing your instruments?
Not very much. Playing our instruments.
Oh, we do some every other Tuesday now. Why, Wanda Sampson is wanting to learn some of those old songs that we used to play. And she comes over, and Joe and Marie bring the guitars and are learning some of those old dance tunes.
I think Rich has been coming. So that's kind of fun. It's just something we can kind of depend on.
I had just about quit playing the fiddle. My shoulders were bothering me so much, and I couldn't hold the violin up, so I fixed me a chair with an arm on it and a pad, and I can sit in the chair and not play like I used to, but a little bit, quite a little bit.
Yeah.
You played for many, many years.
I just don't really how many. Well, from the time I guess Bud and I got our guitar probably in about the 5th grade, so I would have been about 12, maybe 12 or 13. But Grandpa Dunn used to let me play with him. Not so he could be heard very good, but he hold it down, but he let me play with him, and I used to watch his fingers. I never learned the notes on a music, just looked like birds on a barbed wire fence. But I watched him and learned to play, and I pretty well satisfied him, except he didn't like the way I handled the bow. I was too jerky. And he was a really good country fiddler. He didn't know music, but his brother was a concert violinist.
Oh, wow.
And he had a good violin.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thanks for sharing all that.
Thank you very much.